this is a special class where I'm going to talk about how to mix up your colors. If you've got this special kit that's a Woodlands with a few tropicals, extras and refills in here. So we've got our Woodland set with Reef and Sunset and Hibiscus. So it's a purple and a pink and an orange. So whether you've got this set or something similar at home, you can still follow along. You're going to get started by just putting the standard color, and I've put water here on each of the pans, and I'm coming in here and filling in this green. Just take a little bit of water and show you that this green moss that's in the Woodland sets, and then Daylight is this yellow. I'm going to take this green moss and mix in some Daylight with it. And when we do that, I'm going to test it over here just to see if we like that. It's got a lot of water to it. This is nice for some of those fresh stems that we've got in your cottage series. Some of the lavender in the little cottage. This would be great for those stems, and also in that floral bouquet with the mirror, the stems are more of this bright poppy green. Now I'm going to go to this green with Cavern, and I use this for a lot of my Taken paints just to kind of deepen up this green. So we've got kind of an olive color here. Depending on how much green you add in, you can see that is the same color, the same two colors put together, and they get these two tones. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into this color chart. And you'll improve as you keep working over time. I've already got the green moss, the Cavern, and then I'm adding a little bit of shadow, which is the name of that color there, just a little bit of black. It's kind of a gray black, so if you have a true black, you maybe want to use less. And let's see what we get. I want it to be a little darker, almost like that hunter green again that we had up here, but a little deeper in tone that way. Put that in here. I've got a lot of water, and I really wish I had more pigment in here. That Cavern again. You don't have to mix up this much, although in some of these motifs you will need this much, especially in that little pantry one, because I added water to each of these. So this is this green moss, and a nice amount of pigment in there. And now we're just going to use Bear, which is a brown. So it's that Bear and this both have a little bit more blue than some of the other green and brown, like the tropicals. Brown has more of a yellow to it. So this is going to have more of a blue appearance, except for where this yellow is kind of flowed into that. So those are drying up nicely. And of course you can go back over, for instance, this. And now when you've got more deposited in here, you get more depth, you can see. Okay, so now we're going to move to this moss and gray. Oops, that's a little bit. And sometimes they'll mix within your own palette, so you may have more than just two colors that are mixing, like I did here. And you can make even more colors out of any of these. And obviously the amount of pigment you have, if you do 50-50, or if you do like this green with just a little bit of gray, will look very different. So you can play around with your palette. As you saw me in the video, I kind of had them on the strip here. ahead of time just to kind of work out. For instance, this one has a ton of greens in it. We've got a little bit of a blue green, which I'll show you in a minute, a light green, which is going to use more of that daylight color. We've got this jug. So we have several greens in here, so you'd want to work those out ahead of time and get a couple of puddles here and use those for your painting. Okay, so now we've got this with a little bit of this blue. I'm going to use that kind of lightly adding that in. So that's got that nice turquoise. There, that's good. So that would be like that little metal vase in that drawing I just showed you. Would have more of this turquoisey color, or it's nice on the shutters on the cottage if you want that kind of turquoisey green. Okay, and so we have daylight here and pond, which is this one. So I didn't use this, although the stems in the bouquet with the mirror, you know, could be a little bit brighter than this. So it's got a really like neon look when you mix these two together. And then we have the last one here is daylight and the stream. So it's similar to this, but it's still got a little bit more yellow. Undertones, but a little bit more of a blue, green than this one. So we're going to color mix out of the Woodlands set, and we're going to look at the brown family here. So in this set, it's called Bare. So this is just Bare as it is, out of the box. You're welcome to use that, but if you use it and you've got a couple of different browns, you might want to have some variations, either in tone, like by using a lot more of the minerals, or by mixing a few other colors in. So now we're going to take Sand Ridge right out of the box. We've used that to make the golds as well. You'll see in this video. That's a nice color to use in this series. And then Cavern is kind of this little bit kind of a yellowy side of a terracotta. Nice rust color here. It's great for complementing some furniture. You'll see how we'll mix that down here. So if you have your Bare and you add in a little bit of this Cavern here, and I'm just kind of going back and forth, sort of figuring out what type of mix between those I want. More or less brown, more or less of the rust. And so I'm going to say probably somewhere like this might be nice. So I've got some of that Bare and a little bit of Cavern. It's a little bit close to what I have, so I'm just going to kind of pop a little bit and mix it in on my paper, and we'll see how that looks when it dries. But to me, these are nice as wood colors. For instance, in the desk, if you have the desk in a brown and then the chair in this Bare and Cavern color, it gives it a variety of wood colors in your cottage series. So now we have this Bare and some Sand Ridge. We already will look at that again as a tan for the tan and gold. Let's see. Kind of overlap and what you're using them for. So this is the Sand Ridge. I had a little bit of gray in there from before when I had my brush making that gray below. And you can obviously make that a little deeper with brown. So I'm adding more than 50% of the brown in with that Sand Ridge. So now we have Bare and Shadow as an option, and that's going to be a much darker shade. And let's see what that looks like here. It's really dark, and I'm going to, sometimes what I'll do is just take something I've already mixed, add more brown to it in this case, just to kind of lighten that up. And this is a nice brown, a little bit of that shadow in it, and I liked using this. You can use it for, like I said, furniture, but also in our little cottage here in the background, we've got these trees that are kind of in the shade and this roof. This is a good color to use for that. So now we're going to look at some bare and a little bit of this daylight. It's kind of getting like a mustard gold color here. And that could go down into the gold area, but it, you know, we could use that for those metals that you see in the mirror and the lamp, the book jackets. It's a very nice color. And then Bare and Mist adds a little bit more blue to the brown. Gives you an idea with your kit if you see something you'd really like to mix with this. Maybe since I've got these two boxes, I'll go ahead and show you kind of adding a little bit of purple to a brown is nice. And let's just see what happens when we add a little bit of like a red color. We've got this foxberry up here. And I think actually, now that I'm looking at this, is what I mostly used for that chair in the office. And that's a nice, like kind of that orangey brown furniture color. So those are great. Moving on to mixing the gold and tans from our woodland set. And we're going to use a little bit of daylight, which we had up here. And I'm going to make this even a stronger color than I did over there because I was mixing those in as a green. And then we have Bare, use again in the browns. And that's how the color looks just as it is in your set, depending on how much water you use. And now we'll, which is really the star of a lot of the show for Cottage, is use the Sand Ridge. So let's get some strong pigment. It's not as opaque, so it can look a little chalky, so you want to just keep that in mind. It'll cover up the lines a little bit more than maybe something like this. Okay, and so we're going to take this Sand Ridge that we have here and mix it with daylight. This is how I make a lot of my golds, especially something like, I have a motif that's like honey. Let's try it out over here. Let's just get a little bit more of that Sand Ridge. So I'd say about 70, like if you made it like this, mostly that and just a dab of the yellow to start. See how that's already turning out more like a gold? So let's put that in here. And that can be nice for the areas where you've got like the mirror, you have a couple of different golds to use there, or some of the leaves, or the. You will go to Sand Ridge and Bare, making some of that. And we've got a nice little tan, which is great for a lot of the woods and background colors. So we have the Sand Ridge and Bare, and now we're going to add a little bit of this daylight to it. And I'll show you an example. This has a few golds in it with this little candlestick, the mirror, and this vase. And you see this table has different colors. You've got this bright yellow to pop in here that you can use from that. And in here we have this little lamp that could be gold and other little items, a picture frame or this trash can under the desk that can be in kind of a metal or gold color. And then we have some tan that, we already created kind of this one here, but now we're doing a sand ridge and a little bit of this gray stone here. So we might use this for some of the blankets or in the attic chair for the chair itself, a blanket where we've got nice little kind of a warm gray. This is already a little bit warm, but we've got a warm gray here. So let's go ahead and pop that in. You can see I have a lot of water in here because it is sort of a tan. So if you use more minerals, for instance, let's get it heavy. Really muddying that up. Usually clear your brush before you put it in your palette. But so that's a gray. I was loaded up there on my brush. So it's got like a darker gray, and I could pop that in over this. It's the same exact combination, just less water, more pigment. And now we have the sand ridge and shadow, which is darker, so we'll use less of it. You're welcome to bring a little bit over so you can kind of see about how much you have, clear your brush off, and then slowly kind of marry those two together. So it just deepens it a lot like using the bear, but it gives it a different tone because this shadow has some kind of blue undertones to it. And that makes nice shadow for the furniture underneath it, or like if you use the white oak look for the wood floor, that's a nice color for that one. Starting on our oranges, and first up we have this redwood that's in this Woodlands box. So it's kind of a rusty color and not quite, it's a little more red than it is yellow. As opposed to this cavern over here, you'll see the difference. This is straight out of the box. We have some planters, some little vases, little pots, and especially this one here. These kinds of colors are really going to work with this particular motif. Okay, and then the hibiscus comes from the tropical set. It's an extra, and I have that included in here just to give that brightness, and those colors work really good if you ever want to do my decanter motif, because these are all like kind of bourbon type colors. So we have redwood and foxberry. Now let's add, this foxberry is kind of this cranberry color, so we're gonna add that in here. Let's get a little more. So it's more on the pinky side of that coral or orange, which was really nice in that attic chair. You can use this if you want a fall pillow so that the flowers are more in the orangey side. And then hibiscus and a little bit of mist here. You can really make actually like a black out of that. So, that is not where we're headed. So I want to add more hibiscus, but it gives it that kind of burnt color. Kind of goes in that brown family. They all overlap so much, as you can see. So you really don't need to be able to make so many of these because the browns and oranges are very similar. Sure that I use this poppin' of a color here. But hibiscus and daylight just gives you that kind of a little more of a bright orangey color, especially if you're adding something bright in the sky, or as I showed you that tabletop, a few of those flowers. If you really just want to get a nice pop, some of the roses, for instance, if you wanted to do these in a bright orange, once they get dry, they're a little bit less poppy as it is. Like I was showing you here, we've got all these dried flowers that is good for. And also here we've got some kind of poppy oranges, so that's good to use on those motifs. And we have these flower boxes and flowers in here that have some of these colors in it, and a lot of these you'll see match right here. We also have, I'll show you in the pinks, but let's go ahead and do that here. You can take a little bit of that sunset and a little bit of this hibiscus, and you can kind of make a corally color. Add a little bit more orange in that. So it's a rosy orange, and we can just see what happens when we just add a little bit of that reef. Just another subtle difference. It's a little more on that rosy side than it is on the brown side. For this set, then, we will do the pinks. We have Sunset, which is an extra to this Woodland set. It's, you know, you can kind of pop in some colors here, but it's very muted. So having this Tropicals Sunset color in your kit is really great. Let me get some of this cleaned off here. This Foxberry is the only kind of red or pink that you have, and so it's very limiting. It can make some really great flowers, but it's also very limiting. So adding this in is really nice. And then this is a purple color we'll get down to here. So we've got that sunset color with water. So I just want to show you how you can make such a nice little rosy faded color here. And I'll show you how we have that here. We have this nice little pinky color there, and that will work. Got Sunset and Reef. So that's a very intense color. So let's mix these two together and make this kind of pinky purple. And if we want to make it a little more sunset than we do reef, we can just add that in here. And sunset and daylight, so I'll clear that off and see what happens with that. So now you're moving into more of those corally colors we were talking about on some of the other mixtures. It's starting to look a little like Foxberry, but it's not, as this one's a little more cranberry. I'll pop in some more pigment here so you can see that. Sometimes my brush I don't clean off well enough, so they mix. Okay, so now we'll get a little bit of sunset and hibiscus. Kind of similar to the one next door here, just a little more. Put a little more hibiscus in that. And it's good to just get your little strip like we were doing before and kind of test that out and say, what do we want in our palette before we get started? Okay, so now we're trying a Sunset and Cavern. This has a little yellow, rusty color to it. These are all going to be similar because I've got more yellow, but you're getting these nice corally colors, which can make great book jackets. That's how I'm creating a lot of those. We have a lot of books in these cottage motifs. Foxberry and see what we can make out of that, because this is our Foxberry color up here. And now we're going to just use a little bit of water. So if all you have, you should have this kit with these extras, but if all you have is the Woodlands, then you can use that for your, if your pinks are just going to have a little bit of a different tone to them. And this Foxberry here and some shadow, which is this kind of black gray. So that makes a nice little cranberry. We'll go down here to this purple. I'm going to grab some of this reef, which is the extra. It's very intense. And Foxberry and Mist. So when I only have my Woodlands kit and don't have any extras in there, I'll mix together a purple. I'll show you can do, oh, I got pink everywhere. So this is more of a plum, obviously, than this intense purple over here from Reef. You can add more Foxberry and get this color, which is more of a raspberry. Or you can add more Mist, which ends up being more of an indigo than this color here. This gives you a nice, I'll put this one in here. It gives you a nice book jacket. And if you've got the Reef, you can just mix those together as well to kind of brighten it up a little bit, so it's not quite as muddy or muted. And then we've got this Reef color here, which down there is also, and some Bear, which I used in several of the motifs. So it's got Reef and Bear, kind of gets you to almost the same as this, but just more in that blue than red. So we have Reef and Greystone. I flipped that. And depending on how muted you want it, you just have to pay attention to where you made your colors so that you can know to get back to them. And you can use, I've got this one, I haven't used it yet, but this flat ceramic, you can wash this off, put watercolors on. I've done that many times, just wash it right off. And that way, if you don't want it to tip and you're at home, rather than traveling, you can use this, and you can let these paints dry and use them over and over and over again. So as soon as they dry, you can just reactivate them with water like you would your pan set. So there you have your pinks and your purples that I've used in the Cottage series.